You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 556, where tonight we're going to break down the second of the Tales of the Empire episodes. This one focused on, these three, I should say, focused on Barriss Offee. And we just had a chance to talk about the Morgan Elsbeth. That one turned out, I think that show turned out really well, and I love the discussion that we had. I expect we're going to have some of the same similar types of discussions with these episodes, just because they were as good, if not better. And there's a lot to be said, and that was not said in these episodes as well. And joining with me tonight, as always, is Jonesy. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Yeah, it's great. After 10 long years, we finally get something of a story around Barriss Offee. So this is really exciting to be able to dig into it. Really interesting way they went with the character. I don't know that I was expecting it, but I think it fits really well. So we're really excited to talk about this one tonight and really dig into this one.
Yeah. Before we do, though.
Before we do. Patreon members, thank you all for everything you do. So we certainly appreciate. We want to welcome back Jamie again. And again, Jamie tends to bounce back and forth, it seems. But Jamie, we're happy that you're back with us on the Patreon channel, as well as all these other amazing people in our Patreon membership. Now part of the tribe members: Raphael, Danny, Rob, Mike, Lauren, Dante, Riss, Justin, Jackson, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, Isabella, Uncle Leon, Josh, Jacob, and Rita Reborn. And then our Delusions of Grandeur members: Rod, CJ, Steve, Das, and Alex. He made such a big deal that you and Lauren always forget him on the live streams. So I got to make sure I keep my Alex points by continuing to bring him into the membership roll call. So.
Yeah. All right. If you're interested in Patreon, head out to cantinacast.com/Patreon. Sign up there. And for anybody joining us tonight on the live stream, thanks for liking, subscribing, being with us. And head out to cantinacast.com/YouTube. Like these fine people that are already here with us.
Yeah, Skywalker's Academy, Trent, Steph, One Up versus CPU. We see you people out there in the background. So we hope that you'll join the chat and say hello, interact with us. If you have questions, put them in the chat. We do try to come back to them. If it's not relevant at that time, we will try to come back at the end of the show and answer any questions, any thoughts that y'all have, any insights. We do like to bring those up. If you're watching this after the live stream, please leave us a like, leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. Let us know your thoughts. We'd love to interact with you there as well. We certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, if you got questions, throw them in there too. Well, if we don't get them on the air, we'll answer them offline as well. So,
and Albert, we have a show right after this one. What are we doing right after this?
We do. We're going to be doing a Patreon exclusive. So we're going to be celebrating the anniversary celebration continues for the Phantom Menace. So celebrating 25 years. This is an opportunity for us to kind of sit down and just get a lot of stuff out that we've been kind of teasing and talking about here and there in these side conversations. But this is where we're finally going to just talk about everything we loved about the Phantom Menace 25 years ago. We're going to kind of go over what our experiences were like back then, talk about the impact, the significance of it, maybe the cultural impact that we as well. And then we'll talk about our more recent viewings and what that experience was like now that they've got it in theaters, which, by the way, I think it's scheduled to leave the theaters here very soon. So if you've not had a chance to get in there and get your ticket, make sure you do that. And then we'll kind of end up talking on the legacy of the Phantom Menace and just kind of everything that it spurred and created and birthed coming back, coming out in 1999. And it just changed a lot of things. So, but yeah, that is all coming up on Patreon right after this show. So 10 p.m. Central. And then later on this week, no shows tomorrow because we'll be honoring Mother's Day. And then next week, we've got a couple shows that'll be focused around, well, actually, I don't know what we're focused on right now.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me. Find it yet.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll tune in next week as well. We'll have more shows back to the Thursday and Sunday schedules as well. So,
before we change it all again for Acolyte, again, you just touched on this briefly. Speaking of birth, a very happy Mother's Day Eve to all of our moms out there. Anyone that fills motherly type of roles, we certainly appreciate you. Thank you so much for everything that you do and you bring into our lives. And thank you, Padme Amidala, for birthing Skywalker Saga.
Yeah, without her, the galaxy would have been better. But we thank you for doing it all the same.
I guess we have to thank Shmi too. Well, yeah, we have to thank Shmi too. Yeah, Shmi's the original mom. Yeah.
Yeah, that's who I meant. I was talking about Shmi. So
yeah. Padme's, Padme for Luke. Thank you all, moms. We appreciate it.
Yep. Okay, let's talk about Tales of the Empire, Barriss Offee. All right, same thing as we did last time. Just kind of what are your initial thoughts on these three? I know we had a chance to compare the Morgan Elsbeth episodes to these three, but did anything change since then, especially now that you've had a chance to view them a few more times ahead of the show?
Pretty consistent still. One of the things I like about this Barriss Offee arc is that we do have we have like one or two parallels with the Ahsoka side as well, like when they're training, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we get to those scenes. But I like that there was a little bit of coordination between them, some speculation around some of the characters that they're talking about towards the end. Who's the traveler and who are they going to go see?
Hmm.
And so there's some interesting ideas there that they're very open ended. But this is really satisfying, I think, to see Barriss Offee. And also, what I think I liked most about these, just to kind of keep it high level, what I really liked most about these is that Barriss Offee is still trying to figure out what she believes in and who she believes in. She knows at her core what's right and wrong. What she didn't like about the Jedi does not mean that she aligns with the Empire or the Inquisitors or the Sith or anyone like that. That was never her problem. And I like that even though she has to take some extreme measures and make some really bad choices within this arc, that she sees really quickly what it means to truly be a Jedi. And she comes back around to it to find a way to how to make, I don't know, how to get herself in that place that says, this is what it means to be a Jedi. This is what we should be working on. I have my regrets, but this is how we should behave. And she finds solace in that, and she finds a path forward. And then she's helping people achieve that on their own too. So I really like that we got this with Barriss Offee, because that was always at the heart of the character, no matter how far and how bad it got for her in the Clone Wars. This is what she was always about, and I was really satisfied that this is the direction that they took with her.
Yeah, so I echo the same things. Like I did enjoy this arc, and if I'm being truthful, I think this arc was maybe just slightly better. Although like I said when we covered the Morgan Elsbeth episodes,
Very different though.
they're
Yeah.
very different, and I kind of come around to those three with they're trying to do kind of two different things in my opinion, honestly.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, but there was something about these episodes that gave me more hope. Where the other ones was like, okay, I already know where the story goes, and it was very insightful in terms of what they were trying to do. This one gave me hope, just to take it away at the very end again to some extent, but nonetheless, at least they answered the question about what happened to her afterwards, and then we're like you said, we're still left with this open-ended question. I even got down there. It's like, okay, well now what happens to Barriss Offee? Because I don't think that was exactly clear to me at the very end of the episode.
Right.
Um, technically, again, some of the best animation. I love it. I mean, it's probably a no-brainer. This stuff is going to continue to get better and better every time, but it is still worth mentioning and gushing over. The sound effects, the music was great in this one. I love the use of some of the singing that we had in this episode, like the chanting or whatever, like live vocal in the episode. We don't get enough of that in Star Wars, in my opinion. I mean, there's plenty of it, but the more the better. I think that just makes it much more dramatic, hearing the human voices in the background. Yeah, and then just kind of like, everything kind of tying in a lot of what we've gotten about the Inquisitors, and all that. It used to be kind of a mystery, and now with Rise of the Red Blade, all the Jedi games, comic books, all of that really kind of gets pulled back, and it used to kind of be like this dark circle, and not really, it's kind of nebulous. We weren't really sure exactly, and there's still a lot of questions, I should say, out there about how all this works, and why they use names and don't use names. And, some of this stuff is now trivial, but I think foundationally, I think we've got a lot of great answers, and we kind of, I should throw in the Kenobi series as well. We kind of understand really what was going on here, and just to what extent, what they were doing. And it's multi-layered, right? I think initially we just thought, oh, the Inquisitors, they're going out and just killing Jedi. Well, that's not the case. They're actually going out and killing Jedi. They're recruiting other Jedi. They're using Jedi or sending them over to get tested for other things. So it was really, and then not on top of that, cleaning house with lightsabers and Jedi artifacts and anything the Emperor could get his hands on. We get to see all of that now when you kind of piece all that together and take that kind of holistic view. So it feels more well-rounded than it did just a few years ago. So credit to, Filoni and everybody that was part of all this to kind of fill in all those pieces.
And I kind of like that we don't have the number of the brothers and the number of this. They just relate to them as brothers and sisters. They didn't name them or number them off, which I think was I thought was kind of interesting, because they're so early after Order 66 that some of that hasn't taken root. It's subtle, but it's also there. It shows you that the evolution of it. I am curious to get your thoughts as we get through each of these episodes. Like, where exactly do these pinpoint? I mean, the first episode is clearly, Order 66, end of the Clone Wars, birth of the Empire. The second episode feels pretty soon after that, and then the third one we have to see exactly how far in the future we jump. But as we get through these, I'm going to be curious to get some of your thoughts around maybe when these fall a little bit, these second and third episodes.
Yeah, definitely talk about that. Steph says, I like the sweater. By the way, I got this at Her Universe, so if anybody's looking for it, they have it on sale there. It's really nice, very comfortable.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, that's Ashley Eckstein's company that she does in partnership with Lucasfilm.
Mm-hmm. Coincidence? I don't think so. Okay, so let's get into the breakdown. We're going to start with Devoted, and even the titles of the episodes were different than what they were trying to do with the other one. This was just kind of more to the point and kind of what she was going through and feeling. I love the fact that we opened up with like the sounds of Order 66. I mean, it was dark. You could still hear everything was going on. You're like, oh, there was no doubt in my mind exactly what was being done there.
Right.
Of course, she wakes up and she gets a shock trooper telling her, well, good thing you're not a Jedi anymore, and wait till tomorrow because they're not even going to. So it was interesting to watch her watch from far away, and you got to be wondering like what's going through her mind. What is she thinking at that time, right? Like, yeah, I don't like, kind of like what you were saying earlier. I don't really like what the Jedi are doing, but is this really what I wanted? Like, I think she was very sincerely fearful and fearful for what was happening and distressed about what was happening, because that's not exactly. I mean, that's not what she wanted. She never wanted the fall of the Order, although she was a terrorist, but she never wanted the fall of Order. She just wanted, get everybody's attention and say, hey, wake up, right? This is not who we should be at this time, but not let's change empires, let's change regimes, and the reality being that she gets sucked into the new regime, which is just as, or not as bad, if not as or worse than the original one.
Yeah, this was very reminiscent of Grogu, actually, a Mandalorian, with the echoes of Order 66 and we had it more in the flashback, but still just the nebulous kind of feel. And when she wakes up and hearing these sounds, it just kind of it's very disorienting, right? And then to look out the window and see the burning temple, curious what the Jedi Council wants of her when Lynn comes in. She's still operating in the Jedi Council will always be there, right? The Jedi will always be there. It's unexpected, unfathomable that anything could uproot and completely unseat the Jedi from the Republic. And even later on, she's like, what empire are you talking about, right? So it's clear that she's way out of the loop. She's been in prison this entire time, and she's lived a very solitary life for quite a while now after the events of what was the name of the episode, The Wrong Jedi, or that arc, right?
Yeah. You asked the question about how much time has passed. How much time do you think has passed here? Because it did feel like there was a time jump. I mean, because it opens up and it's raining. I'd imagine it's not huge. It could be days, maybe a couple weeks, but I don't think it was an immediate kind of thing. They didn't just slaughter all the Jedi and then first thing 8 a.m. they're like, hey, go rattle Barriss Offee's cage and see what she's up to and see if she wants to join. I mean, I imagine some time passed there. How much time would you expect there?
Well, I mean, yeah, and I kind of wrote that in the notes too of, when Lynn comes in, she's still wearing robes, or maybe not robes, but she's wearing cloth. She's not wearing the Inquisitor's armor or anything like that.
Yep.
So clearly very early on, nothing has really been set in stone. So I'm thinking between this and when she comes out to Fortress Inquisitorius, I'm imagining that time is probably just maybe just a few weeks. I think they probably move relatively quickly. But I think them coming out to visit her, I imagine, was a few days later, because I mean, the chaos has got to settle down a little bit and let some of that stew a little bit. But I imagine it was pretty quick. I mean, these aren't, I think one thing I'll give the Empire, they're not one to kind of sit on their laurels at this time, at least, and not start moving things forward. And I think when all the Jedi, they go missing and scatter after Order 66, the Emperor is going to be very keen to not lose that scent. And so to fire up the Inquisitor program and get everybody indoctrinated and see who's going to work out and who's not, probably is a fairly quick process to get rolling.
Mm-hmm. And I love the way when Lynn comes in, she starts immediately kind of playing into all the conspiracy theories, right? About the Jedi being, trying to assassinate Palpatine. That is the message that they're, propagating throughout the entire galaxy. She talks about, she sets up the Jedi as being these horrible people, and she's done some horrible things. However, she now has an opportunity. It's a rare and precious opportunity, right? She's kind of, playing that up. And of course, she's not really given a decision because the blasters get ready
to fire and prime them up, right?
Yeah. So it's like, oh, okay, well, I guess I don't have a decision here. But, we get the proverbial cuffs being released with the Force. But I did enjoy that the propaganda machine there and just the messaging that Lynn was bringing was very consistent with what we've seen. And, the fact that they didn't really give her an opportunity is interesting as well.
Right. And she uses the words that Barriss used in her trial, of course, right? You once accused the Jedi of murder and treason. Turns out you were right after all, playing into a bit of the ego and a bit of the stroking of like, you know what, you were onto something.
Mm-hmm. And we see
And
you. We see
yeah,
you.
and right. And this opportunity is going to make use of all of the things that, you know, you saw that were wrong with that institution. And here's your opportunity to do something about it. But like you said, pretty threatening. And Barriss Offee's pretty intuitive, you know, for at this stage. She's had a lot of time to think. She knows what the right answer is, which, you know, her colleagues in a few minutes here really didn't yield her advice very, very closely.
Yeah. So so she jumps in a shuttle along with Lynn and some other troopers, and they head over to Nur. We get over to the Fortress Inquisitorius. Love that it was still being built. When I first saw it, I was like, what the heck? It's like, what happened to the rest of it? And I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. They've got, you can even see the scaffolding and stuff like up there when they're first coming in. So nice to see that was still being built. Now this, again, probably it's hard. We don't know exactly when that was being built, but it is obviously some time before we get to like the fortress that we see in the Jedi games, of course, right? Much time before that. And we're introduced to two characters. I don't know if Dante's with us tonight, I'm sure he's going to listen to the show, but I was like, hey, cool. One of our stout members of the show is in this episode. Although you do die, Dante, so just spoiler alert there. But Dante and a character named Amar, we're introduced to both of them. They all seem to know each other. I didn't go back to look to see if these guys ever popped up anywhere. I don't even know what the relationship, and it's not important.
These are new characters, I believe.
Yeah, okay. So the idea is that, they knew her. I mean, she was a prominent Jedi. So these guys could have been Padawans. They could have been the Jedi cooks or the Jedi nurses. I don't know. But they definitely knew her. They all seem to know each other. I would have liked to know more about why they were here as well. Not a deal breaker, but did they have similar opinions of the Jedi, or were they just captured and imprisoned and, forced to go through the things that they go through? It's, again, not important, but I was generally interested to know more about them, which we never really did.
Right, yeah. And Dante, she seemed to have more of a friendly relationship. Amar, I wouldn't call it maybe a rivalry, but clearly there was a lot of tension there, and they weren't really friends or friendly in any kind of way. And so, but it was really cool to see that she was like, oh, a friendly face, someone I recognize, thinking that there's a new team, right? Establishing a new family of sorts in many ways. And of course, that's not the way it's going to go, but none of them, they're so fresh faced. And I'm with you. It wasn't really clear what the other two were bringing to the table because, I mean, clearly we had nothing to go on them for. But I think with Dante, at least, we start to see a bit of that desperation later on in the episode, but there was nothing really there to give them. And I thought when they were all in the cell together, it would have been a great opportunity for them to share a little bit of like what their issues were, and for some of that to somehow come out, but it didn't pan out that way.
Yeah. And again, I think it's fine. Didn't need to know it, but it would have been super interesting to hear why they were. I mean, they could have just all been on a Zoom meeting at one point. They're like, oh yeah,
right.
Right.
It's one of the shortcomings of the shorts, so to speak. That you're just not going to get all of the detail you would get if you added another 10 or 15 minutes to the episode. So be it. Did it hurt the episode? No. Would it have built it a little bit more? Absolutely. But again, the characters weren't going to last very long anyway. So why spend too much and belabor it?
Yeah. Welcome back, the Grand Inquisitor. Loved that he was back, of course, and he comes in and he gives them all the kind of the updated speech and the pep rally about the Jedi are gone. Talks about how the Republic's now been reorganized into the first galactic empire. He talks about out of chaos, Emperor Palpatine will bring order, and I'm thinking, geez, man, this guy is like, again, just part of the propaganda. I mean, it's the messaging, it's the consistent messaging that they've got here. And the key takeaway from that message is, I think, is his last line about how his vision must be protected at all times. At the end of the day, everything that the Empire does is all about Palpatine's vision, which is eternal life, right? You can throw everything else in there you want to, but at the end of the day, it is strictly about eternal life. So all the stuff that we were seeing in the Bad Batch, everything that's happening here, it's all for the preservation and the glory of Palpatine, although, they mask it under the glory of the Empire.
So I did want to get your opinion on this, though. So the Grand Inquisitor he's almost like slow playing this a little bit. He's not really drawing firm lines and drawing kind of being an Imperial as much. It seems like a softer type of speech, right? He said the Jedi failed the Republic, but we must build a new coven to secure the Empire. Coven almost feeling like a family in some ways, or, another team and a group, right? Someone working towards common goals, but his tone is more open, and he's not as hard. He's a little softer, I guess. So it's almost like that. When you go to your introductory meeting and everything seems great, and you're like, yeah, everybody's on board, and then day one shows up and it all goes to hell. It kind of felt like that, but Do you think that was intentional to try to lull them a little bit and make sure, like, what do you think his reasoning was behind that? Or do you think he was just kind of being a wordsmith and just kind of slow playing a little bit?
No, I would agree. I think that's exactly it. I mean, and right now, again, we don't know how much time has passed, so they may not be in the thick of things. This could be early. I mean, we don't even know if they've been running around doing this for how long at this point. So it could be right now, all the work has been pretty light and they're not in the thick of things and they haven't been in the what, right, that we get to see later down the road. Certainly by the time we get to Rebels. So yeah, I think it is kind of a soft messaging. I would agree. It's probably, if you've ever gone and interviewed for a job and you're like, man, this job sounds great. And then you start day one and you talk to the guy, not the person in the interview, not the boss, but you talk to the guy on the ground. They're like, man, this place sucks. You don't want to be, this is, how did you even sign? Why did you sign up? Why did you get hired? That kind of thing. You realize, holy crap, this is not at all what I kind of thought it was. But by then it's too late. You've already given yourself over. You signed yourself up. So yeah, I think it was intentful. I think it was purposeful in the way he was messaging all that.
Yeah, it was like orientation, right? Orientation, everybody feels pretty good.
Everybody's super high.
Right speech. Yeah.
Can't wait to work here.
Yeah.
And then day 5 kicks in. You're like, my God, is my resume updated yet? Okay. So yeah, so they escort all 3 of them back to the chambers. They kind of get into a little discussion here where Mark's talking about how, hey, we're in no better position than we are with the Empire. The Grand Inquisitor even tells him, hey, don't leave. I think that was kind of a test. Like, they didn't lock the doors. He told them, hey, don't leave. It's in your best interest not to. Paraphrasing, of course.
Right.
And yeah, he takes him up on it. So Amar leaves, and we find out what happens to Amar a little bit later. But later on, there's 2. Lynn shows up. She's got 2 troopers with her, and she takes Barriss and Dante over to see the Grand Inquisitor. And then this is where he tells her your friend has a terrible accident. He throws down the jewel. I don't know why people haven't seen this, but the jewel is the one that was like embedded in his chin. So he died, and then they like pried it out of his chin as a token, or at least as, to show, hey, this is what you shouldn't do, or this is what can happen to you if you don't follow instructions around here. So he throws that blue stone
real
right in front of their face.
Yeah, real subtle.
Yeah. Passive aggressive much? No, that's actually not passive.
But Barriss told him, he's like, you should not leave. Right. Yeah. I mean, you should not leave. You should read between the lines here about what they're telling you. And like, don't you get a feeling for what's going on here? And I like that when they're in the cell, Dante's pacing, right? This is after Amar leaves. Dante's pacing, but Barriss is still very calm, meditating. Of course, she's probably very used to being in solitude, feeling like she's a bit under lock and key and in prison. So she takes this moment to really try to center herself of what's coming next.
Yeah. And of course, at that point, Dante is taken away, which I assume he went through the same thing, with maybe Lynn or somebody else, or maybe they had him holding there. And then after GI was done, he went over to the next room and did the same thing with him. But I would imagine they did the same stuff, just to, again, another test number 2, if you will, to see if they're ready and willing. Right. But he takes Barriss Offee, of course, to the training floor, training room. We get a lot of the stuff that we saw from the trailers here, right, with the fighting and being forced levitated, force pushed up into the ceiling, then brought back down. And we finally got to see Barriss Offee finally just kind of give in to her hate. I think she was frustrated at that point because she was getting knocked around. She wasn't able to hit him the entire time, that he was just kind of dodging here and there. But I love, before that all started, he said, the lessons you will learn here from the Jedi greatly limit your power, but I will help you overcome this weakness. And that messaging continues. Like, again, it's not just a physical thing. It is a mental thing. It's a psychological thing that they're going through and trying to break down these Jedi and break down what they've been wired to do as Jedi for so long. And again, it's all condensed. So right. I'm sure over time, right, if you expand this out, it is that messaging continues to happen for multiple people, not just the Grand Inquisitor, but unwiring and rewiring these folks is all part of the game.
Yeah, this was a very truncated version. If you enjoyed what you watched here, and I know we've said it a bunch of times, but I'll say it again, you really should go pick up Rise of the Red Blade, like the Inquisitor book from Delilah S. Dawson, because it is absolutely wonderful in this and understanding the duration and what this process looks like of what Iskandar Karas goes through and all of the different things, the psychological, the torture, like there's so many more things that go into it. This was a very, concise, just trying to keep the story nice and tidy here. So if it felt a little expedited for you, a little bit rushed, it was.
Mm-hmm.
Go and read the book. It's really not a long read. It's actually a pretty quick read, or you can listen to the audiobook like I did. And it's really enjoyable. And I think you'll get a lot out of that, especially if you're curious about what what it takes to go into becoming an Inquisitor, and why some people don't make it. A lot of people don't make it, even the ones that do well. And it's not always as simple as, well, you just go in there and fight in the pit. That's a big part of it, but it's not all of it. That's not the whole story. So
Yeah.
just want to plug that one more time. We don't get anything from that. It's just, do yourself a favor. It's a good story and worth the time. I like this interaction though with the Grand Inquisitor, right? So stop fighting like a Jedi, and he hits her in the face. I mean, he's got to pry that out of her. He's got to get that anger stirred. That she's been in a cell. Every time she showed her anger with the Jedi Council or with the trial and everything else, it always came out in floods, or it was put down. And so she doesn't know how to let go. And I think that's the thing that the Inquisitorius has really got to figure out with these Jedi. Is like, wait, how do you get them to stop acting that way? And usually it's just brute force and torture and mental anguish. And you just put them through the ringer you have to completely break them down in order for them to finally unleash their full potential. And then she certainly does, right? I mean, he picks her up and slams her against the roof. She gets pissed and then pushes back on him, draws blood. And I mean, and then you've got, and he's like, yes, this is the one that we knew was possible. And this is what we always knew Barriss was her potential is that she has a lot of power. She's very skilled with a lightsaber. She is strong in the Force. She had a fantastic master with Luminar and Dooley. She had friends that were very powerful in the Force. So you figure they sparred and they would do all sorts of other things. So she held her own against Anakin Skywalker. I mean, so that there's something. She's a very good Jedi and a very adept in the Force Jedi arts, I guess, so to speak. So it was really great to see some of that come out, even in a short form format.
Yeah, I would agree. I think what he was, on top of all that, my take on it was, I think he was breaking down the Jedi code, not necessarily line by line, but a lot of the things that he was saying were to evoke emotion, right? And we know that one of the lines in the Jedi code is there is emotion, there is peace. The other thing about this battle, it was kind of chaotic. And the last line of the Jedi code is there is no chaos, there is harmony. And I think that's the rewiring, that's the undoing, the decomposition that needs to happen to get him out. And the only way he was going to get her to react, the only way they're going to know whether or not she's capable of doing that is, can they get emotion out of her? Now that's exactly what happened. He got a lot of emotion out by calling her out for saying, you're fighting like a Jedi. That's an emotional attack. It's like, I don't know what are you trying to say? Like, this is who I am. This is who I have been. And you say that's going to get her kind of angry. He says, now I feel your anger. Well, the first thing, as a Jedi, if someone said that, you're probably going to react with like, I'm not getting angry. And that's going to probably make you angry, right? So it was all just kind of like, you touched on it. It's a mental game. It's trying to evoke all that and try to get them to try to tap into the dark side, which of course she eventually does. But the last one was the best one. He said, mercy only breeds defeat. Right. And that is like the quintessential thing about Jedi is that selflessness. It's the mercy that they show, always show, perpetually show. And, he's trying to, like you said, beat it out of her, trying to get her to understand, like, that's not going to work around here. So all of that was great. I mean, I love the fighting scene, by the way, that we didn't really necessarily talk about the technical aspects of the fight. But again, really great stuff, most of which we saw.
Yeah, and this is an important scene to remember because the Grand Inquisitor is telling her basically that she's predictable because she's fighting like a Jedi. He can anticipate everything that she's doing. And this is all going to come back in the third episode as well.
Yeah. Which, by the way, just as a quick aside, when watching the trailer, they gave us like nothing from that third episode. That was held under like secrecy the entire time. We saw a lot of all three episodes from the Morgan Elsbeth, and we saw a lot from these first two, but they gave us nothing from that third episode. And now I think in retrospect, we know why, but it was pretty great that they did that. So I love when they keep things from us, but I hate it as well. Okay. So let's see, we get they escort her out and, or they brought her, I think this is where they bring her back in. Now she's being escorted into the pit that we saw from earlier in the trailer. Lynn and Grand Inquisitor are up at the very top. They're watching. And this is the trial that we kind of suspected. I think we suspected as much when we were doing the speculation for the trailer breakdown. But they are, they're like, hey, you both impressed us. You guys are great candidates, but we only have one position. And so, again, the work analogies are hilarious.
I don't understand how they do this, though, why they limit to one position, but okay.
I mean, yeah. Did they really have one position? Probably not. I mean, who's to say they couldn't have more? But I guess at this time, I mean, it's certainly successful. You're going to get the best one out of the two. I don't know. I think they probably had their money on Barriss all the way. And I think it was just a matter of this was more of a test for her. I don't think old Dante or whoever Dante had a chance. Honestly, I really don't. I mean, yeah, he was more aggressive and he was the one that bought in, but I think it was they really wanted Barriss Offee, given her powers and well, that just around
I
that.
completely
The fact that
agree
she's
with
probably
you.
what's that?
I completely agree with you. I think exactly what it was. I think it was just to make sure that just to see if Barriss would actually unlock her potential and give
Hmm.
in and show it. Because if not, then she's no use to them anyway. But you're right. If she does, then her ability is is unlimited, and then that way.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, they get into the fight here. She's of course saying they won't kill us, and this is, the ray shields are closing in, the pit opens up in the middle. She asks, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Embracing the future." Like, yeah, if it's me or you, it's gonna be me, right? Or it's gonna be you, I should say. You're going before I do, kind of thing. And of course, the battle goes on. Great stuff there. And then the force choke, what happens, which was a nice callback to what happened in the Clone Wars, right? Seeing her to be able to go through with it all the way. Although technically, he kind of did fall over, so maybe he wasn't technically dead yet, but
I took it that she broke his neck.
she may have.
I thought I
didn't.
heard like a
Snap.
neck snap. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, she was kind of desperate at that point. They done that at this point. We have to assume they've done enough to get her to where she was. But yeah, like I said, it was good to see that at least if nothing else. Again, it was a good callback there, back to where it was. So they come back in, they give her the black helmet, tell her welcome, sister, and Lynn and Barriss follow the Grand Inquisitor right outside.
Yeah, and I like that. And to our point before, Grand Inquisitor, when she was kind of losing or not giving in, you could tell the disappointment in his face that I think emboldens kind of where we were coming at before. Of they really wanted Barriss to show what she was made of and not give in. Also, of course, this is very much similar to the Ahsoka series from Tales of the Jedi, where she's doing the training remote exercise, and they've got the shield around her, and they make it smaller and smaller and smaller. So the objective is to disable all of the remotes, before it comes in on her, so that they're shrinking this ray shield around her, around this pit, of course, to force them to make decisions faster and act on instinct, act on their aggression, act on their feelings, and their fear and everything else. Makes a lot of sense. It was a nice parallel that Barriss and Ahsoka are still somewhat connected, even though they're completely unrelated stories.
Yeah. And then we get the big finale with Vader finally coming in. So, and this didn't go at all like I thought it was going to go.
Yeah,
I mean,
were you disappointed? Because we speculated that Vader would
Yeah.
have some impact in it. Were you disappointed that he just kind of sat on his throne and just, all right?
When I looked up at the time and it was 13 minutes and I knew this thing ended at 15, I'm like, well, I guess we're not getting the discussion that we were hoping to get. But
Well, and the one frame was actually reversed, right? They weren't kneeling; they were standing up from the trailer.
Yeah, I
Just can't trust them darn trailers.
I know. I think there is some disappointment there, but it's not. Does it change anything? No. In my headcanon, did that conversation probably happen? I would think so. Like, I don't understand why it wouldn't. I mean, maybe not. Maybe, let me think about this. Vader knows who Barriss Offee, but does she know who Vader is? There's no reason for us to think that she does. Could she have found out? Could she have heard? Maybe. So I would see Barriss as being the person that would maybe initiate the conversation, but I don't think it would go the other way. I don't think Vader would necessarily go, "Hey, glad to see you here. I don't know if you know who I am behind the mask, but it's me," kind of thing. I mean, that just wouldn't be the right thing. So I don't know. It would have been cool to hear them have a conversation about it all and get his thoughts and opinions on it, or get, have her ask questions about why and, whatever. Like, there's a million questions she probably would have that I would love to have heard his perspective on. But does it change anything? No, not really. So,
yeah, and I think, like you said, we speculated on some of this, and I think I may have come on the side of Barriss is smart enough not to talk to Vader. That that trying to address some of that would probably not work out real well, because Anakin is dead, right? And Vader killed him and is trying to eliminate that part of his past and doesn't want that part and to be brought up. And then One Up versus CPU, actually in the chat, he went here. So since they went there, I got to bring it up. Does Vader being here work with what happened in the Vader comic? The answer to that is unclear, I think, to be generous. And I think at worst, it's a little at odds with it, because Vader is introduced to the Inquisitors. It feels like a little bit later on from when this is. And I think that's where where Albert's, if you're not Vader, Albert's question before of like how long has gone by is really relevant here, of saying, okay, well, how much time has passed since Order 66? Because it felt like, I can't remember exactly how long it was before Vader was introduced, but he was introduced in a very not so positive way. So that Vader would sit there actually makes some sense too, and I think is actually consistent with the comic because he's not a fan and doesn't want to interact with the Inquisitors. They're a tool, and he
Mhm.
sends them out to do things, and sometimes he has to do that with them. But he's always perpetually disappointed in them, and that they're reckless and they don't do the things, and he feels like they're loose cannons. They're all temporary objects for him. He doesn't expect any of them to survive, and of course, many of them don't. So, kind of consistent with the comics. The timing might be fudged a little bit, possibly. So, unfortunately, the comics kind of lose again a little bit here, but I don't think they do anything egregious. I think is maybe where I'd land on that one.
Are we sure this is the? So I didn't pick this up, and I maybe I missed something. I didn't read this as this is the first time he's being introduced. I read this is the first time that he's introduced to Barriss Offee, or the first time Barriss has seen him, because the way the was it sixth brother? I forget all the numbers now. The way he and Merrick kneeled almost immediately, it's like we've done this before. We know what the routine is. And then Lynn and maybe Lynn, I don't know. That seems kind of weird too, but definitely Barriss. She was looking around like, "What am I supposed to be doing? Oh, we're kneeling. Okay, I'm kneeling now too," kind of thing.
Right.
But I got the impression that this was just a routine, team meeting on Monday morning, and he was coming in, and this was old hat for them. But I didn't get the impression that this was the first time they ever met. But I could be wrong.
I'll have to go back and re-listen to the dialogue about how Grand Inquisitor introduces him. But I think, anyway, I think the other part of it's still kind of to be determined about how far is this away and when was Vader introduced. Because if he'd already knew them, then it kind of further degrades a little bit of the comic book angle of it because it felt like that happened a bit later on. But
Yeah.
it's been a while since I've looked at it, so don't hold me to it. But that's what I recall a little bit.
Yeah. But it was very powerful. I was wondering if he was going to say anything, honestly, because I was like, oh, whose voice is it going to be?
A little disappointed he didn't say anything. Yeah.
Yeah, but I get it. They'll figure that out at some point here. But he does say, Grand Inquisitor says, "Rise, Inquisitors, long live the Empire." And then she finally succumbs and at least plays along with the game. I think we now know retrospectively, having seen all 3 episodes, her heart has really never been in this program. But she puts on the helmet anyways, plays along, falls in line with the rest of the folks, and says, "Long live the Empire." I love the voice change too. That was really kind of
They did a good job
creepy
with the
and neat.
modulation. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I had the question about did they have that conversation. So, yeah. Anything else you want to add to that before we get into realization?
No, let's move on.
All right. So realization, open up with the shuttle there flying in hyperspace. This is Lynn and Barriss. They're now heading to looking for some a rebel cell. They never really kind of explain what that is, and I didn't understand how they were rebels outside of them. Well, they don't give us any details. We just have to assume that they're rebels, right? But the key point is that there's a Jedi here that they've been hiding, and all that kind of tracks. I think I love the fact that she was kind of challenging the credibility here of the intel. That seems like something she would do, right? If her heart's not in it, then she's going to second guess a lot of stuff, or at least try to put the doubt in Lynn's mind. I don't know how much of this happened. I think over time, if they were paired up a lot and she was always doing this, she may have gotten to her, and that might have been just enough to where we get to the final episode, the 3rd episode, where it finally, you have to look at all the things that were said and all the things that were done, all the doubt that was put in Barriss Offee's head and anybody else as well, that finally broke her or allowed her to break. But I did like that she was challenging this, and then we get kind of examples of that when we get into the village itself, when they're in the market area, and she's really trying to like downplay the severity of what really needs to happen here. Again, all that goes counter to what the Inquisitors should be doing, and so that I think again starts to weigh on Lynn's head or Lynn's mind as well.
Did this feel like Barriss's first mission to you?
Ooh, not really. I assumed there was a time jump here at this point. Like I felt like this was maybe not. They weren't a year away, but I feel like they'd already been on a few of them. But I could be wrong. It's not really clear.
I think at the very least it may have been her first mission where they were being sought after a Jedi. I mean, I think that part felt pretty clear to me.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah,
it still felt kind of early though for her to be questioning things. Maybe she was just like, to your point, maybe she was just kind of nervous about, does she really want to go through with this against the Jedi? If they do encounter one, what would they do? And of course, once they get to planet side, I mean, she sees things and she's like, this doesn't make sense. Like the philosophy starts to not make sense. And I like that we get kind of a philosophical debate throughout this episode too.
Yeah, there's they get to the settlement, they touch down, people are running, they're like roaches scattering now that the Grand Inquisitors are here. You can see them kind of hiding behind stuff as they're coming through the town there. And then she's looking around and she's realizing like, now that I say that, now this next line I think makes me think it is kind of one of her definitely earlier missions, because she's going around thinking like, hey, is this really what the Empire should be doing? Like, you're
Right.
supposed to be helping people, and that's very ignorant of her to think that that's actually what they should be doing. That she's talking about how they're living in, basically poverty, and they're not being cared for. And Lynn's response is, well, they reap what they sow, kind of thing, and she's kind of taken back by that. She talks about how loyalty is what will set them free. So all this feels very alien to her, of course. So I would expect this to be again early on. But yeah, Barriss says that as long as, hey, let's just get the Jedi and then we can kind of leave these people alone. Of course, that's not what happens. They get over to the market square and they go in. A lot of the citizens won't even make eye contact with him. I love the animation there. You can clearly see how uncomfortable they are with them being around. It's not clear either if they've run into these guys or they even know who they are. I got the impression that they did, because they were very, edgy anytime these guys came around.
You mean that the townspeople knew who the Inquisitors were?
Yes, yeah, I wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah, I felt like they at least had, maybe by reputation, maybe, but I don't. I think this felt like this was the first encounter with them.
I think that's possible. I mean, and granted, they stick out. I mean, they're in their black outfits. Barriss is wearing a mask. I mean, look intimidating. They just look threatening, right? And they're flying the scythe, right? So the same shit that we got in Obi-Wan Kenobi. So they're doing all these things. They just look imposing. I think it's enough to probably intimidate you. But if you know that you're doing something that you know you shouldn't be doing, I think that's also something, because I'd imagine that the reach of all Jedi are wanted has probably reached all corners of the galaxy.
Yeah.
Even this place. This planet kind of reminded me of the Bad Batch, like the Crossing episode back in season 2. Kind of looks similar. I don't know if that was intentional or not.
I don't remember that episode.
That was the Ipsium mines. That was the good tech episode with
with
Omega.
Tech and Omega. Yep, that was a great episode. Good one-on-one moments there. So they get into there. Of course, this is very reminiscent of what we got with Kenobi, right? They're looking for the Jedi. Where they're asking where's the Jedi? There is no Jedi here. And of course, the little kid runs off, and that catches Barriss Offee, and she would probably be the one to be more in tune with somebody's feelings like that, or catching on to cues like that, where I think Lynn was coming in ready for blood.
What was the difference between like the Grand Inquisitor in Obi-Wan Kenobi, and who was the one that just wanted to? Oh, it was Reva, right? That just wanted to start breaking eggs and taking names and figure it all out later, sort the bodies, kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah, she was very much of that same ilk. So, but yeah, they're there's an old guy. It wasn't clear whether he was like the leader or just kind of the official spokesperson. He pulled a short straw. I don't know why he got selected to be the representative, but mentions that, hey, there's no Jedi here. I know what you're talking about, right? Kind of thing. Never believed him personally. I was like, oh, this guy's covering up something. I think it was more about the eyes and the way they animated. You could tell something was, he was hiding some stuff.
Oh, sure.
But I did love the fact that Barriss went over there and started trying to talk to the boy, tried to ask him where the Jedi was. That wasn't working. She kneeled down, got to his level. These are all things you do when you're talking to children. You get at their level. You remove any hats.
You take off your scary helmet with the voice modulation.
Yeah, you take that off, because that's kind of frightening as well. But after she kind of, took off the armor almost literally, it was when the boy finally opened up and said they're hiding in the mountains. And of course, she does. This is where it gets so brutal, like it kills me. She says, you did the right thing for everyone. Because in her mind, she thinks, yeah, you did it, kid. You saved everybody.
We'll move on, right?
Yeah, we're just going to pick up now. We'll get out of here. You guys don't have to worry about us anymore. And, of course, Lynn had something else to say that. So say something about that.
Right.
And then the next scene. Sorry, do you want to add something to that?
Well, and remember, the man says people are judged by their actions. Mm-hmm. And clearly, he's going to pay for his. And then very apropos.
Yeah. The whole thing about, the way when Lynn blocked Barriss from leaving, right? That was pretty powerful. I love the fact that, she's just kind of walking by like, okay, let's go. We don't have, they're in the mountains. Let's get out of here. Like, la, 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 la. And I think she probably may have worried or feared that Lynn would lash out. And I think she was just trying to get out of there quickly before she even got any thought any more in her head.
Well, I think there may have been a part where Lynn wanted her to see it, and she needed to participate in that too, and see what happens about what they do with anything that even borders on insurrection or insubordination or breaking the new imperial law. And I think she has to show that brutality. That's why I thought this was a very early mission, or maybe the first mission where she's seen this type of scenario play out. I mean, clearly, I think it's it's definitely that part. But I think she wanted her to make sure that she witnessed this, of like, this is how we handle these types of situations. And people, if they don't want to tell us the truth, not just one person, everybody had the opportunity to speak up. nobody did except that one kid, and he was granted permission to live. And of course, he's the one that can share the story of you don't lie to the Empire.
That's interesting. I have a different take on that in just a second.
Okay.
But it's not crazy different. It's just
But
slight
this was
variation.
exceptionally brutal, though. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, the fight was absolutely brutal. Like, and the fact that it was, again, the more you don't show, the more powerful it is. You could hear it. You could hear the screams. You could hear the lightsaber going off. People in the people that were talking and screaming kept getting less and less and less as she killed more and more and more of them.
Oh, such great sound design.
We had that one shot where the lightsaber comes through the wall. It's very quickly. You can see it. So she's piercing somebody right through the wall there. The little boy, of course, runs over to Barriss and is kind of hiding behind him. But right before she kills the old guy, the elder, if you will, I don't know if you know, there's a kid that jumps out in front of him, like to protect him.
Right.
And so I assume that she went through both of them, but it was just a very brutal scene to hear more than see. Right. And once it was all over and the boy was still alive, you could see Lynn. She was seething, right? She was kind of caught up and raptured in the passion, of course, of the dark side and what she had just done. And she was walking away. And I thought, well, is she going, like, she's going to probably kill the kid. I wouldn't have expected her to let the kid live. I like what you're saying. Maybe it was to send him a message. But then I thought, well, maybe this is part of that light that's still in her. Like, because this kid was by her the entire time, was by Barriss Offee. She might have been thinking too, like, okay, they're that close. If I try to kill this kid now, Barriss is just going to stop me. I really don't want that anymore. We did what we did, kind of thing. But when they walked away, I did it. Like, it's similar to with when they get to the mountaintop and she walks away from that Jedi. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you don't leave people alive. You kill them, right? That's just what you do as a Sith, or that's what you should be doing, in my opinion, as an Inquisitor. You've already sent the message. The message is, you don't mess with us. Look at all the dead bodies, right? You don't have to leave anybody behind or alive. But I think it was more, in my head, I think it was more about the light side that was still in her, not being able to go through with those last two final blows, last kills. And she almost tries to rationalize the second one a little bit. We'll talk more about that here a little bit later. Mm-hmm. But I think for this one, the fact that the kid was closest to Barriss, that, that was probably enough. And okay, the message is received. I really don't want to go through with that. And I think that's probably counterintuitive to what she should be thinking as an Inquisitor.
I like that there's different ways we can interpret it. Yeah. And I'm curious what would happen if she would have tried to take the child. Would Barriss have lashed out and defended him and tried to?
I think she would have
had a conflict. I think she would have too.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if Lynn didn't want to figure that out. She didn't necessarily want the answer of that. Plus, they're not there for the kid; they're there for the Jedi. So I think when you weigh your options from Lynn's perspective, do I waste my time on this kid and potentially have a conflict with my other Inquisitor because I don't know which way she might go here, or do we just get back on task? And I think that Barriss is, and I think maybe to Lynn's credit of what she expected Barriss to do, Barriss just left the kid too, right? They just left the kid. Now, granted, she said, "Don't look back." She channeled her inner Shmi Skywalker, but and closed the gates. But I think at least Barriss was, I don't know, quote unquote, smart enough here, however you want to interpret that, to say, "You're on your own. Like, we're not hanging around," but also to get back on target and get back on task of hunting the Jedi rather than protecting the lone survivor of a massacre.
Yeah. And that poor kid just got left there.
Dude, I try not to think about it because it's just absolutely brutal. And it's so, yeah. It's really, it's pretty dark stuff, man. It's pretty dark stuff.
Okay. So they head up to the mountain. This is where Barriss is telling Lynn that, we weren't here to bring chaos, which I'm like, whoever told you that that's not the case? But again, more of her ignorance, more of not really understanding what she had signed up for.
Well, Barriss says that Inquisitors are supposed to bring order, not chaos, right? But Lynn turns it around. Of course, the rebellion brings chaos. Eliminating it is what brings order, right? So I thought that was an interesting play on words of how you can kind of restructure it to get to the same place, or the place where you want your person to be.
Yeah. To continue that, I have the same quote. To continue it, it says, "But creating fear will turn the people against us." So this is similar to what we hear and see for Morgan Elsbeth in the first set of episodes as well, right? Right. And, she says, "Now those who witness our strength will respect it." I mean, she's not wrong, but to the point of what they were trying to make in the first three, it's like, this is a terrible long-term solution. This never works out, in the long run. Eventually rebellions start and you end up kind of getting lost, losing. They get to the top of the mountain. Of course, there's the I don't know, the boulders that are falling down that separates them. Probably more of a plot thing than anything else because it allowed Lynn to get to the top before Barriss Offee.
I'm assuming the Jedi pushed those over to try to, knock them off the side. That's kind of
Maybe.
how I would interpret it because they looked like they weren't. It wasn't like an avalanche or anything. It looked like they were up there and they got. I mean, something forced them over.
Forced
I would
them over.
imagine.
Yeah, no pun intended. But she gets to the top and they're fighting with the Jedi up at the top. I loved everything about this Jedi. I love the battle itself, the technique. Definitely was able to hold their own throughout the entire battle. I mean, they got Lynn down. They were about to kill Lynn and stopped. Were stopped only because Barriss had jumped in and prevented that from happening. But before I forget, at some point, I would love to see if we get more of that story from that Jedi at some point. You know what I mean? Like, it'd be great to hear and see more of that. But this is a lot of fighting. I don't want to go through all the the beat by beat kind of thing here. But anything you want to add to the fight before we get into what Barriss starts talking about, her kind of message about hubris and all that?
No, because I think that's where the interesting part gets to. I think the fatigue of the Jedi start to come through, right? You start to feel those emotions, just the being on the run, what the effect is that she can only keep this up for so long. She's exhausted. She's got sweat pouring off of her, and I love that Barriss tries to give her an out. It actually and convinces her either. But anyway, that's where you wanted to go. So
yeah, no, I mean, they were definitely physically spent at that point. They were tired. And as they were attacking Barriss was kind of just like shrugging him off, right? Shrugging off all the attacks because, she
started toying. Yeah, the second half of that fight, she's just kind of, I wouldn't say toying, but she's definitely not having to work very hard to avoid and to deflect. And she wants to have the conversation. It's kind of like Luke and Vader, like he's just able to batter away every second.
Yeah. So Barriss does ask them like about, I know what it feels like to be lied to and deceived. And I wasn't exactly sure what was going on there or why, Barriss was trying to connect to them in that way.
Well, I think she's just trying to not have to kill her. I mean, bring you in. I think she's still acting like a Jedi. I think it's mercy, right? This goes back to the Inquisitor in the first episode of saying mercy breeds defeat. And she's trying to just give the Jedi an opportunity to lay down her weapon and come peacefully. But that's not the objective of the Inquisitors. The objective is to kill them and take their trophy back and move on to the next job. And she just doesn't want to accept that. And I think that's where Lynn steps in and takes matters in her own hands.
Yeah. But Barriss does go through, Barriss is trying to recruit this Jedi, talking about a new life that can be out there kind of thing. That Jedi then says, I'm tired, I'm alone. You could see it all over their face as they were talking about that.
It's such a great job with the animation and the voice acting. We're, really on target here, on point.
Yeah. And then right after that is when Lynn finally lashes out. So, and of course takes that person out. And then Barriss says that they're still alive and they need to get to the Jedi to the ship. And Lynn doesn't want, she's like, walk away. Right. She wants to just let them live. And this is where like I said, I had some questions about why would she do that? Why the whole point was to go up there and kill the Jedi. Barriss just told her the Jedi was still alive, that they had not killed it, and yet she was okay and willing just to walk away. Now, maybe you could chalk that up to, okay, I just got my butt handed to me, and I've been unconscious for the last 5 minutes, and I just want to get out of here. And they're eventually going to die. If there's nobody up here, they're going to bleed out at some point here or whatever, right? Maybe that's it. But I would have felt like, I thought she would have gone back and, did what needed to be done kind of thing, but she doesn't. So I do feel like that is probably some of that light that's still in there. Maybe the first doubts are being kind of shaken up and seen here in that moment there.
Yeah, and of course, it's very much a plot device because it's the exact same scenario that we have, in the third episode too, to get the parallels and to make different choices and different decisions, right? So part of that's that. I think also we've seen the Inquisitors be a little sloppy at times and make assumptions that they were wounded. They're on the top of a mountain. Everybody down below is dead. Mm-hmm. The only option for them to do is die. But again, why not why not do the killing stroke and just make sure that it's all done, right?
Yeah. And then we got like that last line of one Jedi left, right? I think Barriss says, I am a Jedi, and you got one left to deal with or whatever it is. And it's kind of like the opposite of I am no Jedi. It was really it was kind of like Ahsoka, like more parallels to what was going on with Ahsoka and Barriss Offee, where Ahsoka later on turned away from the Jedi she was now kind of churning back and embracing it. And that was it's a big shift for her to be able to do that, because I don't believe that she's like, okay, I'm back 100%. But she's definitely saying, like, I know I'm not an Inquisitor, and I know I'm not this.
Right.
And so really all I got left to kind of fall back on is a Jedi kind of.
It was a very curious comment. It caught me off guard. But again, I like the idea of it, though, that you're right. She's definitely not that. And she at least understands fundamentally what it means to be a Jedi, and that she's willing to align with those values, I think was very telling. And again, something that Lynn could understand.
Mm-hmm. Was not expecting her to force push Lynn off the cliff.
Nope.
And when she went over, I thought, oh, well, she's dead. Like, I don't think there's any way that she would have survived that. By the way, helicopter lightsaber blades. Like, what the heck, man? Like, did they not have the tech yet? I guess that's how they could explain this. But they're going up this mountain. I'm like, just ignite the lightsabers and fly up there. What are y'all doing?
How do you think? I don't know. Well, how do you think she survived? Maybe that's where she learned. This is where they learned how to do it. She's like, you know what, guys? I was falling off a cliff. I had a lot of time to think.
You're never gonna believe this story.
Never gonna believe this. I put the lightsaber out there and twirled it. My descent slowed. I survived.
Yeah.
Twisted an ankle, but I'm okay.
They have and I thought that too, but if you watch the animation, the lights, I mean, she could have force pulled it to her, but she goes over and the lightsaber's going off as well in like a different direction. But I don't know. It was more of a joke than anything else, because I feel like they're worried to bring that back. We didn't get to see it in Kenobi, and I was really hoping we would see it. I'm one of like the 5 people that thought that was a really cool thing. And I think you and I have already talked about, they went back and like talked about the tech. It's not the blade itself. It's something about the hilt. And so you could chalk this up into, okay, well, maybe they haven't developed the technology yet, and it's not in the hilts that they're running around with yet. And that probably easily explains it. But at some point, you've got to give us the lightsaber helicopter blade thing back again, because especially in live action, I just want to see what that looks like. Me and the other 4 people anyways. Okay.
But of course, Barriss, doesn't want to leave the Jedi. I won't let you die. You're not alone.
Yeah, right.
So,
and she goes back and heals him. And I want to ask you about this, because I don't remember. So all the stuff that I did after the Clone Wars, and what I mean by that stuff, like the books and video games, they've always had Barriss Offee as the healer. Like if you play any game, like the most recent is Galaxy Heroes one, right? She's one of the few, well, at the time, now they've got a lot of them, but she was one of the few people that could heal. And whenever she's in a video game, she has the ability to heal. And then I started thinking, okay, I can't remember if that healing ability came after, because they needed a character to heal. And they're like, I don't know, just pick Barriss Offee. And suddenly she was named the healer. And now they're kind of playing into that. Or was she the healer first before she was brought into the this episode? Do you remember?
I don't remember. We did a show, and I'm looking. Oh, here it is, episode 410.
Oh my God, that was forever ago.
This is a Legends show. It was about force healing. And so, but it was very relevant. And I can't remember, I don't think this was Barriss Offee, but I mean, this was 140 something shows ago. So we might not remember things so well, but.
Do you have the show notes? I would be interested to see if we had her listed as one of the force healers.
Oh, we're so long on time. I don't want to go do that, but I'm going to go out. Let's all, it's this mission for all of us, Cantina Cast fans and hosts, and no matter who you are, let's all go listen to Patreon episode 410. I will repost the link for it, everything. And we'll see what that's all about. I can't remember if we talked about Barriss Offee, but we talked about force healing in general.
Yeah, I remember general conversation.
And there's a Mary Ellen. I mean, I've got the show right here. I can share it on screen because you'll see that it's someone who looks very much like Barriss Offee. So.
Really? Okay. Well, again, it's been a while, so I don't remember. But the point stands. Like, I couldn't remember if Barriss was a healer in the Clone Wars, or if it was something that was just given to her as part of Legends, even though we never saw it on screen in the movies, of course, or in the Clone Wars. Maybe they did. I don't remember now. But all right, nonetheless, she's now deemed the healer. Yeah, that's her. That's Barriss Offee. And I think that is from an episode, right?
That's episode 410 on Patreon.
No, I meant like the Clone Wars episode.
No, that's from... I want to say that's from one of the books, like Jedi Healer or something like that.
That's what it is. All right.
Yeah.
You can see where this is a hot mess for me, because I can't, like, everything's blurred at this point with Barriss Offee. I just know that she is, quote, the healer, and I couldn't remember if that was official or not. And now it's official. Like, regardless of how we got here, she is definitely the healer and deemed a healer, which is great, because we've never really had a lot of them in canon. It's just been recently with Grogu and now Rey and Kylo Ren or Ben Solo, right? And now we've got Barriss Offee in that mix here, but.
I think that's probably what that episode was about. That was all the way back in 2022. Look at that logo. Yeah.
Yeah. That might be my handiwork there. All right. it looks pretty sloppy. So let's go to the next episode, which is The Way Out. And this one was really good. I loved a lot of the symbolism that was played out in this episode. But and this one's kind of short, actually, if you think about it. So we open up on this ice planet. There's a small family, of course. They're walking through what looks like a blizzard. We get the furry-looking ice mole creature that pops up and has got like the Barry White voice, which I thought was hilarious. Not expecting that voice. But they tell him, we're Seek the Healer, and he says, follow me. They head into the blizzard. They get to this like barren area, and the first thing I thought was like, okay, well, so much for secrecy. I mean, you have literally a hut in the middle of nowhere where anybody within miles of distance of viewing can see, but that's fine. It makes for a good shot, especially that establishing shot that they had there. But yeah, the guy takes him over there. There's a woman that comes out and greets them, says, come in, she'll see you now. The first thing I thought there too was I would like to see the baby kind of thing from The Mandalorian. But yeah, they head in, of course, is Barriss. And now she's older, definitely older. You can see all the wrinkles under her eyes. You can see the wrinkle on the brim of her forehead there. I love that she's now wearing white, and everything is she is in a white environment. There's nothing dark outside of the cave, of course. More on that later. But a lot of symbolism here, of course. She talks about, she goes and looks up at the baby and doesn't see anything wrong. And that's when we get the big reveal, I guess, that this family was being hunted down by the Inquisitors because they came by the village. They tested the kids out. There was something about their Micah, the baby Micah, I think is the name of it. Right. And there was something about the baby that spooked them. And ever since then, they've been kind of run down. You hear that and you're like, oh, okay, we all know exactly where this is going. I love that she kind of gave her own kind of personal, story about what happened with her and how, this had things had been different when the Jedi around. They would have been. We've heard this story many times. Like it's been told different ways by different people in canon and legends. Had they, Qui-Gon is the most recent example, at least in my head, because we just watched Phantom Menace. But it's the same kind of message that he gives to Shmi about, had we found him earlier, we would have brought him in and they would train to be a Jedi. And of course they're like, oh, is our baby a Jedi? And like, no, he has the potential to be. So all that was great. I mean, I just loved everything about it. And I'm kind of running through this because we're short on time, but do you want to add anything to that? Before we get into the next part here.
Yeah, kind of two things. One is I liked how she was very wistful about it. She had a smile on her face when she recalls the family of the Jedi, the experiences of it, that it was a positive experience. And then she wrapped it up with, before the darkness took me. Mm-hmm. So she's able to reconcile like what happened, right? Her disillusionment, her fear, the things that were going on around her. It wasn't all necessarily her fault. So that she says before the darkness took her, I think there were other things at play, but that she takes accountability and responsibility, I think is important. Another part that was also interesting was the family said that the traveler, he told us to find you. Who is the traveler? Like, I'm curious who the traveler is that may have referred someone to Barriss to find Barriss specifically, and that it was a male.
Quinlan Voss.
That would be actually Quinlan Voss would make sense because he's kind of nomadic. At least in the Clone Wars, he was always undercover. He was always doing secret missions. He was doing kind of the dirty work.
Yes.
And so he's always everywhere. But that was the only name that kind of popped in my head. I was like, who else could the traveler be that would be a male? I would have expected to be more female, but it was an interesting comment.
Yeah, no, and now in all seriousness, I mean, like, all of this, even when they're talking about the path, right? When they're talking about the path inside the cave, I kept thinking path of the open hand, path of the open hand. I think all of this is part of it, and we may see some of this stuff later, whether it's the mole-looking guy or there's a direct reference to this family. Who knows? We might see Micah pop up in whenever we get to. And I'm kind of being presumptuous here that we're going to get some kind of story around the not path of the open hand. God, you should have stop me on that one. It wasn't the path of the open hand.
You were on a roll. I didn't want to interrupt you.
No. Now what is it called?
Isn't it just the path?
It's just called the path. Yeah, you're right. The path. But yeah, when we get to, I'm being presumptuous in that we might get the path series of some sort. And, we might see Micah, we might see this, we might get some answers here. But yeah, if it is that, then yeah, it's Quinlan Voss. I mean, his name was etched on the wall there when they're talking about the path. So I think it's feasible. It's the only male name. Now, does it have to be everything? Does everything have to be connected? No, of course not. It could be just a brand new character, and we may never know the name of the traveler. But
now you're starting to sound like a separatist.
That's my line. You took that from me.
It got used on me yesterday, so I'm turning it back on you.
Okay. I don't remember using that. All right.
No, you didn't do it. Somebody else did to me. I was
oh,
like, what?
wow.
Your influence on them is
It's
not
catching on.
acceptable. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Steph. That's great. Okay, so yeah, she talks about the darkness, about how that was a long time ago. Talks about the potential, and that the Empire would have, taken the baby from her or did something worse. And I think that's what we were talking about earlier, right? There's a lot of things that they'll do with Force sensitive. It's not just they're going to take them and indoctrinate them or bring them into the Inquisitor program at all. Of course, she gets wind, hey, somebody's coming.
Wise mother, someone is coming.
Yeah, wise mother, right? Using her formal title there, which is very cool. A lot of questions, like really what's going on with her. But yeah, they go out there and they look, and sure enough, there's some, somebody dressed in black approaching. I still didn't think it was Lynn. I thought it was going to be like Vader or one of the other Inquisitors. I figured, okay, maybe it's Inquisitor. At best, it was Vader. But it wasn't, of course, until they actually zoom in and we see that. But she tells the family to take off, gives them the coordinates, tells her to take her ship. And then she mentions, which is, everybody got really excited about, was, go talk to this person, to go see an old friend. She'll understand what to do, which it could be a couple of different people, but it's Ahsoka. I don't know why it would not be Ahsoka. Do you have a different take on who it is?
I could think of a lot of people. I mean, you could think.
Well, I'd say there are people, but if in your heart, who do you want?
Yeah, we all want it to be Ahsoka, right? We all want Barriss. This is one thing that we wanted from the series, is that maybe it would wrap up and we'd have some sort of epilogue. Yeah, reconciliation, epilogue to their relationship, that they would come to terms, but that they may have done that off screen and come to here. Doesn't mean we can't explore it later, but I like her. I mean, you have to think about Reva. Reva's another opportunity in there too, depending on where this sits.
Again, a good one. I like that one.
Where this sits in the timeline. We don't know if this is before or after Kenobi series. To where Reva's out there looking
later. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think just the age, it feels like it is a number of years. So if it's not right before, it's got to be immediately after.
Well, and I know we're short on time, but I debated this. I went back and forth. I was like, okay, yeah, this feels like it's much, much later. But then the Inquisitors didn't. Like, they only lasted so long, too.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. No, you're right. They didn't stick around. They weren't around all the way until they were with Rebels, I should say. Hold on.
Yeah, I guess. About that. Yeah, maybe so. Maybe they were around a lot longer. This is where some of the canon has changed a little bit over the last 10 years. So, but maybe I'm just misremembering. So yeah, this could have been much later then. I didn't remember. It's always difficult to tell which ones have survived this long, but there we go. Star Wars timelines.
There's a great timeline on the Inquisitors in this book for anybody that has it. I need to go back. I'm going to leave it out here. I will go back and do some homework, some light reading later tonight on that. Okay. But of course, she sends them off. We assume they're going to go talk to Ahsoka or hook up with Ahsoka and do whatever they need to do there. She talks about, how do we repay you? And of course, Barriss says the right thing. Just live. Don't die, kind of thing. And then we get the figure. And of course, it's Lynn. She's finally found her. Well, she didn't finally find her. It was, she was like, wow, how ironic. I'm not even looking for you, and here you are, kind of thing. I'm paraphrasing, of course. But Barriss didn't look too surprised to see her. And I thought that was, I don't know if that says anything, but we as Barriss, I think we all thought she died when she went over the cliff. And this is the first time she's seen her after so many years. I would have thought she would have had a reaction. So that either tells me that, she assumed that she didn't kill her, or maybe they had a run in before. I don't know. It was just weird that she didn't be like, oh my God, how did you live, kind of thing.
Yeah, there was a moment where she's sensing and she feels like there's a moment of surprise, but then you're right, when she actually gets close to her and she confirms it, didn't seem to be as much. But again, with Lynn saying that it sounds like she had been chasing her for a while, so maybe Barriss knew that
she's out there.
Yeah, maybe she felt that, or she knew that she was still hunting her, and so maybe they hadn't had a run in, but that cat and mouse game had been going on for a while, and so that was still prevalent. But again, it's a lot of things in like this, or when as soon as you stop trying to do something, it kind of happens, right, in the way that you want it to, and so very much happening for Lynn here.
Barriss calls her a predator. She fires back and says, "You're a traitor." All right, traitor. And then she keeps calling her. She's like, she mentions her by her name. She says, "Don't call me that name." And the first thing that comes to mind is Jedi, right? That name no longer has any meaning to me.
It's the name of your true self. You've only forgotten. Let go of your hate.
She even says that a little bit later.
Yeah.
Later on, there's almost kind of almost a direct parallel to that whole conversation here in just a second. So, they get into this whole kind of thing where, she tries to walk around her. Like, she's not there to confront Barriss, which I thought was interesting.
Right.
Because she tries to go around her.
Right.
She wants a child. She does come back a little bit late. She says, I'm going to go get the kid. And then when I'm done, I'll come deal with you, kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, of course, she steps in front of her, gets in front of her way, pulls out the lightsaber. We get a lot of the parallels that we got from the Grand Inquisitor fight, where she's kind of dodging around, not using her lightsaber, saying that, her anger makes her predictable, kind of thing. You kind of do feel like she's elevated. She's ascended in some way with the Force. She's very powerful, I would assume, at this point too. I mean, she's force healing like crazy. I'm assuming she doesn't need her lightsaber anymore. She's just, a grandmaster kind of level at that point.
Yeah, and I like that she uses the Force to stop the lightsaber. Of course, we've seen that a bunch of times now.
Yeah.
I like that you brought up the Force healing, because I think some of the other thing is, like, some people were asking how come she's aged so much. And I think even if this is, like, say 10 or 15 years after, the moments we had in the previous episode, we remember from Rise of Skywalker when Rey heals somebody, and of course when Ben Solo has his epic lines at the very end of Rise of Skywalker and dies, that when you heal somebody, it takes a little bit of your life force away. So it could be that she's aged a little bit from something like that if she's done it enough times, being a healer, if that's still the angle that Star Wars is going. But so those are always possible angles there. But it's really cool that we got another. I mean, last time, of course, we saw it was in Ahsoka with Ezra freezing the lightsaber from Shinhati.
Yeah, and it's got to. I mean, there's no other explanation for why she's aged in my head. I mean, I thought it was pretty clear. I've seen people debate it as well. But when you think about how long Mary Ellen's lived now, especially with what we got with Vernestra Rowe, it's like 120 plus at minimum.
And she's looking great at 100 and something. Yeah.
Yeah. So they've got to be able to live a very, very long time. So yeah, I would have to say, look, if she's aged that much, then the only other logical explanation is because of the Force healing and what it's been doing to her body. But she does warn her, she says, look, you don't go down the path. If you go in, you may not come out. And she says, my fear is my ally, not yours, which I thought was interesting, right? Because she's taking this, she being Lynn, taking this, okay, she's trying to scare me from going into this cave. And that's not what she was saying. I mean, she was being very sincere and honest about it. It's like, hey, you don't want to go in there. You're going to get lost. She said, you choose your allies poorly.
Yeah. Fear is your ally, not your master, or fear's not your ally, but your master.
Yeah. So I think that one comes in a little bit later, right?
Oh, I think it happens before that. Yeah.
Oh,
no, you're right. That's during the fight.
Yeah,
that's
it's during the fight, but it still continues. No, you're fine. It is all part of the theme, and thematically, this is exactly what it is. It's all about facing her fears, seeing herself in the reflections. More on that here in a little bit later. I know we're way over on time, but this is
Solitude apparently yields fantastic comebacks. By the way,
who's that?
Solitude. Like, and when you're left by yourself, you just like write puns and comebacks and everything, like all the things you want to use in life. Yoda's been doing it. Now Barriss is doing it. I like this.
Yeah. The family gets away. I mean, there's a moment there where after Lynn walks in, they can kind of see her, right? But they, sneak away. Eventually, they get into the ship and they blast off into hyperspace, which is all great. I mean, I'm not trying to take away from the suspense of everything, but I did like that they got away.
Well, she warns Lynn not to go in, right? You do not know the path, and if you go in, you will not come out. And again, it's almost a little foretelling of you as you are today can't come out of this. You don't know the path because your way is lost, right? And she says as much when Barriss follows her in eventually, But I like that the whole path idea is still there, and even when she goes in, she clearly starts running into different reflections of herself. She keeps attacking and lashing out, but she's lashing at it herself. When you start to feel her starting to break down further and further and further until the moment when she finally loses control.
Yeah. No, I wasn't jumping ahead. I have like 2 more pages of notes here.
I'm all over the place here, so yeah. It's not you, it's me. Yeah.
I want to just talk about, okay, the family gets away, because the real interesting part is all of the stuff that happens that you were just talking about with her. Let's talk about just quickly the reflections, right? So symbolically, every time she turned a corner in this dark area inside her own darkness, her own mind, the dark path, if you will, the dark side, right? The cave itself. Every time she saw her reflection, I think there was some shame there, like having to look at herself at every turn, was almost starting to really kind of weigh on her, right? She was feeling like, when you're ashamed of who you are, and I think that's what she was feeling now. When you're ashamed, the last thing you want to do is look in the mirror and have to face who you are and who you've become, kind of thing. And I think that was feeding into the anger, that was feeding into her lashing out at times, the way we saw her doing it. The entire time she's got Barriss in her head, talking about lay down your weapons, I'll show you the way out, kind of thing. Symbolically, it's really all about, the path of light, right? The only way you're going to get out of the darkness is to see the light. I can show you, I can bring you to the light. You just have to let me kind of do it. Physically, of course, she's talking about the cave. There is that line in there about it seems fear is not your ally but your master, because she's completely consumed by fear at this point. She's
Right.
the fear of the Grand Inquisitor, the fear of Vader, the fear of failure, the fear of death, and being lost and dying in this tunnels. All of that is really kind of compounding and weighing on her as well. And I think it's also that there's a fear here that she's not going to be able to go back. Like I think there's a little bit later, there's a line in here that Barriss kind of touches on this, but I think for Lynn, although she doesn't want to hear Barriss say, hey, you can come back, I can help you kind of thing, because I think in her mind, she's already said, well, this is the path I've chosen, right? I've made a lot of horrible decisions. I've done a lot of horrible things. No one can bring me back. The same thing that we get from Vader, right? It's too late. There's no hope for me kind of thing. Because they've been so consumed by the darkness for so long that they can't see a pathway to the light.
Yeah, and you start to see it waver, right? Her lightsaber hand starts shaking. That fear, the crushing wave of impending doom and failure and everything on top of all of that. But Barriss is still there with hope, right? Let me help you. I'm here to help you. Let me show you the way. Basically, all you have to do is let go. Set your weapon down and let go of that life. And Barriss has proven that she's been able to do this for quite a number of years, right? That she can live a life that is rewarding, that gives back, that tries to redeem some of the things that she's done and try to find a better path. I don't know that Barriss's path necessarily about redemption, but about finding that right path of what she felt was right all along. And she can help Lynn do that, but Lynn has to let go of all of that fear and aggression. I think it's mostly fear, to your point.
Yeah, I think you're talking about Ash's comment. Barriss didn't earn her redemption. One episode trains to become Inquisitor. Next, she's good again. I get they only had 3 episodes, but still need a comic series or something. It would be cool to see the comic series. I don't think they were trying to say that she was redeemed. I've seen some people say that this was a redemption. I don't think it is. I mean, if you want to argue that it was, then she's given over maybe this is what you were talking about here, but over the course of a number of years, she's given the one thing that you could argue is worth it, which is her own life, right? That may or may not be enough for some people. I don't know that that's enough to say that she's been redeemed. I don't think that's what they were trying to say necessarily in this one. I think she's just turned a corner, and she's now doing whatever she can to make up for that. But I think if you ask Barriss Offee, maybe she feels like, I don't know that I should be redeemed for what I did. We don't know what other kind of sins and atrocities she committed either. Like it feels like it's only been 2, so you can't beat her up too much on that. But nonetheless,
she did bomb a temple, I guess.
But, but I mean, that was a long time ago, right? Just a kid, right? We all done stupid things when we were kids. But so she says, I forgive you after, so we get to the final part where she sticks Barriss with the lightsaber. Of course, she falls down. The first thing she says is, I forgive you. She says, I don't want your forgiveness. And she doesn't want the forgiveness because she doesn't want to, she doesn't want to go down this path of the light. Like, the minute I say, or I accept that forgiveness, then I'm there, and I don't know what that's going to look like kind of thing. So a lot of denial, I guess, more than anything that's going on here. She says, I want you to show me the way, or I want to show you the way out, metaphorically, again, talking about the way out of the dark side, not necessarily out of the cave.
Yeah, they're talking about different things. Like, show me the way out.
Right.
You already know the way out.
Yep.
You just have to accept it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Lynn is trying to be very literal, and Barriss is trying to actually guide her spiritually.
Yeah, I think Barriss wants her to make that decision on her own, right? She can't lead her there. She can't lead her there to the light, right? So she's trying to get her to kind of come to her own senses and say that she does want it. She tells her, you just have to accept it, Lynn. And this is where she's like, stop calling me that. And I don't remember what the line, she says, but that is who you are. And I wrote in here, it is the name of your true self you've only forgotten. I know there's good in you. The Emperor hasn't driven it out of you fully. That is why you couldn't kill the Jedi in the mountain. That is why you won't kill me now, kind of thing. Because that was, I mean, again, it just parallels that whole conversation between Luke and Vader on Endor. Barriss tells her that the Empire wants them to think that there's no way out. Of course, Barriss knows that there is a path out. This is similar with Reva. Again, a lot of parallels. We haven't really talked a lot about Reva, and we're short on time. I had some stuff in there, but similar things going on there when Reva's trying to make that decision about, am I really walking away from this? I can't believe I'm doing this kind of thing.
And Iskat had a very similar journey as well. Yeah.
She says, so Barriss touches Lynn's hand. That's kind of right there where the wound is at. And then in the audio descriptions, it says the life went out of her. So I know people have debated about whether or not she's dead or alive. At least now, like right here now, the whatever the breath stops, and the audio description says the life leaves her. So I'm assuming that she's dead, but she may still get. It's Star Wars. She could still come back, but I don't know. Do you have a different take on that?
I'm trying to remember that part, and then I remember it saying that her breathing had slowed. I don't remember it saying that a life left her.
Yeah, it said her life goes out or something like that.
Oh, how did I miss that part?
It even says that the breath stops as well.
I noticed. Yeah, I noticed that part. So I was wondering if she was actually still alive. But again, maybe she was in a more of a Jedi healing stasis, like they used to do back in Legends.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like there's other.
She is a healer. She is a healer after all, right?
Right.
Yeah.
There's ways you could explain her death, and I know it's going to piss off everybody, but
well, I'd say in all fairness, we do seem, and we've brought this up before. It feels like we're afraid to kill off characters right now, or that not afraid. We're unwilling to kill off characters anymore. We're willing to leave everything open ended, which sometimes feels like we're getting a little bit shortchanged on. Did the story have a natural finite conclusion for this story arc? And I'm going to talk a little bit about this in our Phantom Menace our Phantom Menace 25 years later here after the show, if we ever get there, because I think there's a part of I read an article today that talked a little bit about that, and I think it's an interesting component of how we tell stories ever since the Phantom Menace, and I think this is a great example of that, where we leave things open because we want to be able to explore them later. Sometimes that's not always very satisfactory for people, and I totally get that.
Yeah. Of course, Lynn finally makes her way out. Very symbolically, you can see they timed that the very last step that she takes before they cut to black is her stepping over the shadow of the darkness on the entrance of the cave.
Yeah, and panning back from the lightsaber she's left behind to represent her life. Yeah.
So kind of cool the way it ended. By the way, ice squirrels, snow squirrels, whatever those things are, they're super cute. We need more of those. Okay. Sorry.
Snow porgs.
Snow porgs, whatever those things were. But yeah, overall, I mean, these were, it was good episodes. And again, trying to do two different things here with this set of stories and the Barriss Offee stories. The Barriss Offee stories were doing something different than what the Morgan Elsbeth stories were doing. But again, I thought they were great, and they were meant to plug in some holes, but not necessarily be a full series. It's not a series of episodes. So I know people are feeling like, oh, there wasn't enough here, or, well, this was, I don't know, whatever terms they've used. No one's happy sometimes, it feels like. But I think you got to really understand what they were what they set out to do here.
Yeah, I think these were good, though. It was a character we wanted to explore, and we did. I think they did it well. It was very truncated, I think, to Ash's point. It was quite rushed, right? We're trying to do this in about 40, 45 minutes total, across 3 different time periods of sorts. But I think for the amount of time they gave themselves to do it, I think they did a pretty good job of this. And I think it was somewhat rewarding to see where Barriss ended up. And I really like that she ended up kind of in the more pure sense of what it meant to be a Jedi and what brought her peace, right? But the things that she struggled with the Jedi Order, the dogmatic ways, the way that they weren't helping people anymore. They felt like tools. They were just another weapon of the Republic, and then she became another weapon of the Empire as an Inquisitor. We could say that it was all rushed, and that's totally justified, I think, in some of that. But I think where she ended up was really crucial, and I think was the right place. And I was really happy that this is where she went. I like that they went the healer route because it does seem to support a bit from what I believe was all Legends type of materials. But this was a good way to end it. And I like that she's trying to get Lynn out of that too. So now that all of the Inquisitors die, but then now it's of course somebody else that hasn't died. So a little bit of give and take. But I think overall this was a pretty positive 3-story arc here of what we got from Barriss. And I believe this is not the end of Barriss Offee. I don't know if it's the end for Lynn's story, because I'm not sure how compelling the Lynn character may be, but I like that Barriss Offee has life again. Barriss Offee will show back up again at some point. Who knows how long that'll be, but clearly the fan response and reaction to having Barriss Offee has been overwhelmingly positive, I think, overall, and certainly invites us to come back and explore this again, and Lucasfilm is going to get that message.
Yeah, the only thing I want, we can end on this, I promise. This is not criticism, but I do have a growing concern that we're saving too many people in this era.
Yeah,
because it starts to really butt up against the desperateness of the rebellion by the time we get to episode 4. I mean, you've got Ahsoka out there, Omega's out there, you've got Harrison Dula, you've got a number of other people in the rebellion, some very powerful people out there in the rebellion. You've got Barriss Offee now, potentially. You've got Lynn, who I would assume maybe she goes on it. Maybe they never connect, and maybe that's why it never really goes anywhere. But we keep adding to the number of heroes that are out there, and at some point you think, how come they couldn't have made a difference, and how come we didn't hear about those stories? And maybe we will hear those stories, but it just, I don't know. I'm not saying it's diminishing that episode 4 and the desperation that we see there, but it does feel like it is starting to pull away from that. And so hopefully they'll be able to reconcile that. It may not happen in my lifetime. It could be years from now that they do that, but that's the only thing I want to add in there. It feels like sometimes we have too many people living and staying on.
I think it's a fair criticism, if we want to call it that. I think it's a fair observation. I think it's something that it feels more that instead of serving story, we're now serving potential stories later on for more content. I'm trying not to say corporate greed and things like that, because I mean, they're all trying to make money by telling stories and giving storytellers an opportunity. But it feels like I could see where people might feel, and I get this. I actually kind of feel this way sometimes too. It feels like we are trying to preserve opportunities to tell more stories that people will come back and see, rather than serving the story that maybe is the stronger story of what is more natural for us to follow, rather than leaving everything open-ended. That some characters survive and find a way through and show back up. And I quite honestly, Barriss Offee, that she would not want to get involved with the rebellion and want to do something smaller scale that she feels more in line with the Jedi, I would be totally cool with. I think that it actually makes a lot of sense for her character about where she's been. Like what I just pointed out just a few minutes ago, I think it all makes total sense. But I'm with you. I think overall, I think we keep leaving ourselves a lot of outs and a lot of open-ended, things going on that it feels like maybe we're not serving the story as well as we could, and that we're just trying to serve more stories rather than serve a story or the story. If we're going to continue doing this episodic chapter-like approach to Star Wars in this era, which is very well saturated with content, right? I mean, let's just call it what it is. It's very saturated, a lot of great content, but there's a lot of it, and so at some point, you're right. It feels like we're stepping on toes. I think the comments earlier, like, how's one of versus CPU, how does this work with the Vader comic? And you start stepping on toes of other content too, and it's a mess to kind of keep it together too. And it could be more challenging, and with it brings more criticism. And is it yielding your dollar that you want to in that way, or would you better served serving a story or the story?
Yeah, I was just thinking too, like Asajj Ventress is out there. We talked about Quinlan Voss. We've got the clones, Rex, and maybe Cody, and it goes on and on and on and on. But
fantastic characters, and I get it. You don't want to kill off great characters.
Yeah. Obviously,
some have to go at some point.
Yeah, they've proven they can create new characters, so they could let some old ones go. So yeah, I get it. Again, we'll see. I mean, I'm not jumping the gun here and saying the sky's falling by any means, but no. All right. I think we've done enough damage tonight. Do you want to say give some shout outs to some folks that joined us for the live stream tonight?
Yeah, the people that do a lot of great positive damage in the comments are live stream folks: Skywalker's Academy, Trent, Steph, One Up versus CPU, Obviously Subdued, Vader's Girl, Rebel Scum, and Ash. Thank you all for coming out. We saw all the folks in the background too. Thank you so much. If you're listening to this, thank you for the download. CantinaCast.com/YouTube. If you'd like to come out and join us on the live stream, get your comments on screen. Let us share them, ask questions. If you're watching this video later, thanks for taking a look. We would love it if you left us a like, and if you left us a comment about what your favorite moments were of Barriss Offee. Where do you think Barriss Offee is going to go next? What do you think about a Lynn storyline? Is that something you'd like to see more of as well? Like, where do some of the gaps fill in? What do you think Barriss was doing, for the last 10 or 15 years or whatever it might be? We'd love to hear your comments, and we'd love to be able to interact with you that way as well. And of course, right after this, we're going to go right into the Phantom Menace 25 years. So CantinaCast.com/Patreon. That's live for our This Is the Way tier and above. So anybody that is at that tier, you have an exclusive link in Patreon waiting for you. Thank you for waiting half an hour for us.
I don't know what we were thinking we were going to do this in an hour. There's no way.
I set all my alarms to not go off until after midnight. I was like, we're in this for the long haul, man.
Yeah, well, that's probably a smart thing to do. Okay, yep. Thanks for those of you sticking around or staying on for the flight. We'll see you guys here in just a few minutes. If not, we'll be back again on Thursday to do this whole thing over again. So thanks everybody for joining us, and we will see you guys soon.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good fun stuff. But I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what. So that's your disclaimer.